Hey everyone, welcome to Tony for Paying in Exposure. Tony for you. Within the layers of hell exist a great many different demons of importance, and of the countless dark hordes, there are only a few that hold the title of Demon Prince. Representing the 7 deadly sins, these great princes of hell are darkness incarnate, the absolute worst aspects of existence. The subject of today is perhaps the most unknown of the demon princes, but also the most influential. Mammon, the demon prince representing greed, has had a vice grip on humanity since the idea of value and exchange were thought up. As long as there are 2 people left on the planet, someone is going to want what the other one has. When you are constantly in the pursuit of more, whether it be wealth, influence, or power, oftentimes it is never enough. For those people, it is Mammon guiding them through the never-ending road to death and an express ticket to his realm of hell. From his domain of greed to his history as a demon, without any further ado, let's discuss the treasurer of hell, Mammon. This video was made possible by the great people over at my Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Also, I have a Discord, so if you want to come chat with me and other wannabe theologists, come join and hang out. To understand Mammon, we must first understand his domain, greed. Greed, also sometimes called avarice, is an extremely difficult sin to fully understand. Greed is something we all instinctively assume we know, but when asked to define it, the task is far more difficult than we might think. Greed is officially defined as an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. But in truth, this is a nebulous explanation when asked to attribute it to a specific person. One might assume selfishly desiring money is greed, but that's inherently flawed. Someone may desire the money they are owed for a day's work, to use for their own wishes and mainly for their own self-enrichment, and there is nothing wrong with that. One might assume not giving money to the needy is greedy, but in truth, if you have earned that money, you deserve to spend it however you like. Money and assets throughout history were finite, either you had it or someone else did. The same is true now. To own something is inherently depriving someone else of having it in turn, whether it be money, a job, or something as small as a piece of food. And the desire for these things that increase our quality of life is not inherently evil. In fact, it's necessary for our survival. I say this, but I trust most people understand these distinctions. There is a line between self-interest and greed. With all this taken into account, however, understanding greed isn't as difficult as it may seem. Greed, much like all other sins, is simply a human desire taken to the extreme. Wanting to acquire wealth, safety, and comfort for yourself and your family is fine and virtuous, but when taken to the extreme, it can have dire consequences. Greed is the insatiable desire to acquire more and more, far and above what is your own individual need. Due to the introduction of currency, that is the main subject of greed now, and it has become so ubiquitous that people think money is the root of all evil. But money is not evil, it simply is. It can be used to bring prosperity to a group, feed the poor, and fulfill the needs of many, or it can be used to compromise the morals of people, give rise to violence and oppression, and destroy the trust of your fellow man. There are many passages in the Bible and other holy texts that warn us of humans' susceptibility to greed. Within the first book of the New Testament, the Gospel of Matthew, there is a strong warning against the act of greed and worrying of material possessions, stating, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and money." Here we can understand that greed was thought of as valuing material possessions above being a holy and virtuous person. Said directly from Jesus, valuing worldly possessions like gold, fine clothes, and extravagant meals in and of themselves preclude us from living a good and just life. You would be fundamentally unable to understand what it means to do something for the benefit of another when you are so used to thinking only of what can benefit you. A self-serving attitude is incredibly insidious, as you may not even be aware of your outlook towards other people. In this case, even giving money to the poor can be seen as a greedy act if the only reason you do it is to simply appear good and virtuous to your fellow man, when in truth your soul is black. In almost every religion, the pursuit of worldly desires and carnal pleasures is the abject enemy of true happiness and understanding of the world. Whether or not you're religious, the core tenets espoused by holy texts, like the Bible, are core to proper social cohesion, in addition to hopefully getting us that one-way ticket to heaven. Universally understood positive qualities in a person like humility, compassion, and generosity directly oppose greed in all forms. But in truth, it's much easier said than done. When a person finds themselves in a position where their sole sources of happiness come from material things like money, food, and influence, the happiness derived is always transient by nature and can be taken away as fast as it's given. This leads to a constant state of fear and paranoia, leading to more extreme forms of greed, like hoarding wealth and actively sabotaging others' attempts at success for fear it will adversely affect you. Ultimately, it would be one thing if wealth made us happy, but in truth, everyone knows that there is no such thing as enough. Humans are inherently goal-oriented, and when you complete one goal, you move on to the next. Acquiring $1 million is a goal, but if you achieve it, you won't just stop. And at that point, you'll have much more means to acquire money. Your goal will get higher and higher, over and over again, until you look back at all the people you left behind, opportunities you lost, and sometimes even lives ruined, and wonder, what was it all for? Spending a majority of your life only thinking about yourself makes it easy to turn a blind eye to the injustices it causes. Businesses ruin the environment, and governments destabilize entire nations in the pure pursuit of greed and self-enrichment. In this finite world, there is only so much that can be taken before there is nothing left to give. There is an alternative, however, and as mentioned, it was found many years ago. A person must not derive their value from the material world, but rather through the love and happiness of others. Love and virtue is far stronger when it comes to bringing happiness to a person's heart than any fine clothes or gold coin. Once our bellies are filled and our backs are clothed, look to your friends and your family and build with them a life worth living. These relationship bonds are stronger and longer lasting than anything you can buy. This is most succinctly put also in the book of Matthew, where the Pharisees questioned Jesus on whether or not it was justified to pay taxes to Caesar. It states, "Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not?" But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, "Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money." And they brought unto him a penny, and he said unto them, "Whose is this image and superscription?" And they said unto him, "Caesar's." Then said he unto them, "Render therefore unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." When they heard these words, they marveled, and left him and went on their way. Anything in this world is never truly yours, and never will be. So do not want for coin. Want for peace and love. Now on to the supreme prince of greed, Mammon. The origin of the word mammon comes from the Latin word mammona, meaning simply wealth. But in the New Testament of the Bible, the term was usually used to describe a more pointed aspect of wealth. Mammon was mostly used to describe a concept, either being base material wealth or potentially an entity that promises wealth in exchange for something, almost like a demon. Both the Gospel of Luke and Matthew quote Jesus directly using this word. Remember earlier when I quoted the Gospel of Matthew saying, "Ye cannot serve God and money"? Well, the actual direct translation is, "Ye cannot serve God and mammon." Here it can be assumed that mammon is a more specific term when it comes to the definition of wealth, where sometimes wealth is used as a state of prosperity in a poetic sense, like one might say they have a wealth of love for their family or a library has a wealth of knowledge. In context of the word mammon's use in the Bible, it is specifically used to describe worldly material possessions as well as a mindset of achieving ever more. How can you serve God when you truly only serve the acquisition of coin and material possessions? It's simply impossible. Within the Gospel of Luke, it again quotes Jesus explaining the mindset of people when they face mammon. In it he says, "And I say to you, make friends for yourself by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Once again, Jesus repeats the words of wisdom in Matthew with another example, here explaining how trust is of the utmost importance, and betraying that trust, no matter how small or inconsequential it may seem, reflects on you and your soul more than you can possibly imagine. If you steal $5 from me just because you think it won't matter, why would I let you borrow $500? No matter the amount, the trust has permanently been broken. If you're willing to betray the trust of your fellow man simply for material wealth, you have no right to think you have earned anything. Thou shalt not steal is a commandment for a reason, and it's much more than just you took what was someone else's. The act itself erodes at the social cohesion of a group, sowing mistrust, hatred, and envy. From the understanding of the word mammon, we can begin to understand how the phrase itself would be personified as the pursuit of material possessions at all costs, whether it be to the detriment of your relationships or even your eternal soul. When the word fell in popularity, it took on another form. The mindset of greed and pursuit of the vain in people was brought on by Mammon. But who is Mammon? Why, a demon, of course. What started as simply a concept of greed was later given form in the great demon Lord Mammon. Later works, such as John Milton's Paradise Lost, describe Mammon as once an angel in heaven who paved the walkways of God with gold. But in time, he began to care more of the price and quality of the metal than the veneration of the Most High, and in turn was cast out of heaven along with Lucifer. Mammon surprisingly accepted his exile, as when he fell to the earth, he still had access to the gold and other material wealth he held so dear. Through him, the people of the earth learned the value of possessions, stating, "By him first men also by his suggestion taught, ransacked the center, and with impious hands rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasure better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill a spacious wound, and digged out ribs of gold." The Dictionnaire Infernal by Jacques Collin de Plancy, written in 1818, corroborates the same story as John Milton, stating he was the demon who taught humans to seek power through treasures, and justify the means to acquire it at all costs, even if it meant destroying the very earth itself. His classification as a prince of hell and explicit association with the deadly sin of greed came from as early as 1409 from the Lantern of Light. This text aimed to attribute a specific demon with a specific deadly sin, with Mammon being that of greed and avarice. There are very few depictions of Mammon the demon throughout history, but perhaps the most famous depiction is within the pages of the Dictionnaire Infernal mentioned before. Here he is simply an old man, no more demonic than you or me, blending in with society but ultimately bringing about its downfall. Perhaps Mammon is a demon that invades the minds of humans, driving them to ransack the earth and its people much like he did after his fall from heaven. Or perhaps he is simply a convenient way to exemplify the negative attributes of always wanting more and more. Money is essential to life, whether we like it or not, and there's no such thing as enough money. But the ability to live within our means and use what we have to help ourselves and our community will bring much more reward than any material good. The health and happiness of loved ones will always be more rewarding than a new pair of shoes. I guarantee it. Well, that covers Mammon, the great prince of greed. Let me know what you think of the deadly sin and its personification in the comments down below, and while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. This marks another Prince of Hell covered on the channel, with hopes to cover them all, so stay tuned. Special thanks to Andre Vinicius de Silva Valens, Anton, Kalos, Frankie Stone, Glacia Lucerne, Goose Kebab, Jim Taylor, Just a Middleman, Matt M, Patty123, Stuart Ash, The Digital Dutchman, The Toaster Messiah, Video Gamer 75, and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this Prince of Hell breakdown, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.